Hello everyone, great to see you all. It's Kevin Adkisson here with the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research. It is a rainy Tuesday and I am here bringing you another Live at 5 from, can you guess? Saarinen House. It is a rainy, gloomy day, and as some of you may know, it is also the last Tuesday of the month, which means it is time for a Uncovering Cranbrook lecture. And so I delivered the first talk this morning at 10 o'clock, and I'll be delivering the second iteration, the same lecture, just a little bit improved, at 7 o'clock here. And this month's topic for Uncovering Cranbrook is Eero Saarinen and his studies and designs for Yale University. And it really looks at even a larger aspect of Eero Saarinen's career as a college and university designer. So with the rain outside, with the unending political calls that just interrupted our Live at 5, and with Eero Saarinen on the mind, I thought that we would come upstairs today and we would talk about the one room at Saarinen House where Eero Saarinen did not have complete control. And that is the master bedroom. And so this is a room in the house that was designed by Eero Saarinen. And so we get into the master bedroom by stepping through Eero Saarinen and Loja Saarinen's designs for the breakfast nook, which has the amazing Kalevala curtain. And those of you, hello Lynette, that were at the lecture this morning know that this house, the Saarinens moved into this house in 1930. It took them about another year to develop all of the color schemes and all of the furnishings for the home. And Eero Saarinen had finished up at Baldwin High School, the public high school in Birmingham. And he had gone off to Paris to study sculpture. When he returned, he was returning to a much expanded Cranbrook, and he began to help his parents with the design not only of Saarinen House here, but also of Kingswood School. And so he would have been 19, 20, 21 years old as he was working on the designs here. And in archives, we actually have a number of letters back and forth between some of the people that Eero Saarinen was working with in order to produce his designs for the house. And so we'll get started by looking at this amazing vanity set that was designed by a young Eero Saarinen for his mother. And so it is a sort of three-piece vanity set with two lamps that are shining light up at the ceiling and then reflecting it back down. The entire thing is built in with a curtain below and then a curtain in front as well. And these ruffled curtains often catch guests off guard because they're in this house, everything is so chic. We keep using the term Art Deco. And when you think of the Art Deco, you probably don't think of white voile curtains with black piping and these sort of ruffles everywhere. But if you think about the next most famous Art Deco house that you know, there's probably not one. The Art Deco isn't really an architecture that we associate with houses. When we think of the Art Deco, we think of public buildings, we think of theaters and courthouses, post offices, we think of trains and toasters and dams, but we don't really necessarily jump immediately to houses. If you start thinking about the Hollywood Hills, Park Avenue apartments, of course there are lots of Art Deco domestic spaces, but it's not what this style is known for. If you do go back into the literature and you look at magazines from the late 20s and early 30s, there are actually ruffled curtains everywhere. Think about fashion and flapper dresses. And if you even look back at the Saarinen's own house in Finland, it also had a number of white ruffled curtains with black piping on lampshades. So certainly the ruffles don't quite line up with our expectation of what to see in 1930s architecture, but it's more of we're just not thinking or looking at the magazines. These would have been very fashionable at the time. So once we get over the curtains and we look at the lights, first of all, if you're actually getting ready with this, I'm not quite sure how it helps with the light shining straight up and back down. I don't know how much illumination you can actually get on your face, but it is this little three-way mirror, and so you can see and get ready for the day in each of these octagons. And if we think of the octagon form, we think of the dining room that's an octagon, we think of the courtyard with its octagonal pavers, and it has this subtle little curve around the edge that is something that makes an appearance in a lot of the elder Saarinen's designs, and so much of Eero's early design work is directly inspired by his father. It also has this unique botanic form that I think one could write a whole essay about. What is this and where is it from? It looks like a pretty typical bud and blossom motif, where this would be the bud, so the flower is ready to open up, and then it has the green leaves around it. But the reason I think you could write a whole essay about it is just the stylization of it and where that connects into Eero Saarinen's stylized ornaments for Cranbrook's campus. I mean, you can already see with just the camera the interplay between the window outside, which has the little V shape with the center leading, and then the design of this more botanic form here. And so I find just the way that in Saarinen House all of these things relate to each other is endlessly fascinating. And when you have one family who's doing it all and thinking critically about everything, you know that these are things they thought about. They didn't just plant this here willy-nilly. The hinges form these ball joints, but you can see that they are hinges. And so I don't have gloves on, so I'm not going to touch this, but the whole thing does actually fold. You can fold it fully around, so there's no sort of stop on it. So you can actually close the whole thing or open it all the way backwards. And then it actually stays on the table. And I did have to take it off one time, and it was horrible. It is bolted under here, so you can't see that, but that is how it is able to do its sort of gravity-defying stand. And if we look closely at it, we can see that all the legs and feet also have a little detailed design work with the little pointed fixture, and then octagonal, I don't know what you would call this, extruded metal pieces. And this is all nickel-plated brass. And you see that it is a smaller dimension, but the same octagonal base of these pieces, which in the camera lens here, it looks a little bit like the GM Tech Center water tower. Now, one could, if you could criticize the master himself, Eero Saarinen, I think you could be a little bit critical about the flatness of these designs, and that comes a lot of times when you have architects who are not necessarily practitioners of the craft they are designing for. They design pieces like a lamp, like a building, and so they're going to design it in plan and section, and then it will be manufactured. Now, both Eero and Eero Saarinen actually hated designing with just flat sheets of drawings. Eero preferred plaster models and perspective drawings. Eero preferred paper models and just huge models. But with these pieces, I don't wonder if they were not designed entirely on paper. And one of my old furniture professors used to tell us that when you're looking at architect design material, you should always just look dead on. And is this the most interesting view? To look at it in full just elevation? And then is it equally interesting to look at it in full plan, just straight down? And if so, what is the benefit of it being a three-dimensional object? And so where does the designer get sort of joy or excitement for the actual three-dimensional aspect? And I would just question if that's happening here. It's sort of most interesting in plan and section, and there's no sort of fluting or otherwise detailing to make this, I think, a richer sort of three-dimensional object. And then there are the matching brushes and hand mirror and shoehorn and comb. And these were picked up around 1934. And these are American-made, not custom designed for the house, but instead selected to coordinate with the house. And so they very much have the Art Deco lines that we know and love throughout the Cranbrook campus, repeated on these hand tools. So Eero also designed, and type in any questions that you have. Yes, there was an architecture category on Jeopardy last week that asked about both Eero Saarinen, and Albert Kahn was another question in the same series. And so you had two of Cranbrook's great architects. I didn't actually see it, so I don't know if Frank Lloyd Wright also made the category, but Architecture Jeopardy is the only kind of Jeopardy I would be good at, so I was sad to miss that category. Now, Eero also designed the bench, and you see that it has these lovely little feet that are also kind of structurally tenuous to my eye, just the way that it completely thins out right at the foot. Now, this bench was actually thought to be lost when my boss, Greg Whitcomb, was restoring this as curator at Cranbrook Art Museum. He was ready to have this reproduced from historic photographs when he went over to the old Institute of Science library, and he saw that they were using a step stool that looked mighty like this bench. And so, in fact, it had somehow ended up at the Institute of Science, and he brought it back and had it correctly painted and the cushion remade. And so that is an Eero Saarinen design. We'll skip the green chair for a moment and look at the two other pieces of Eero Saarinen furniture here in the house. We have this table, which is very streamlined, and if you compare it to all the other furniture in the house, these sort of swooping curves and even this subtle detail of the molding around the edge is different from the rest of the furniture here at Saarinen House. So you do see Saarinen, the son, experimenting in shapes that are different from the father. I've heard it joked that if something has a curve on it at Cranbrook, you should investigate if it's Saarinen, if it's Eero Saarinen, and if it's perfectly symmetrical, investigate if it's Eero Saarinen. Yes, this piece is symmetrical, but it does pass the curve rule. And then the last piece that is correctly guaranteed to be Eero Saarinen based on historic receipts is this end table. And it does have the drawer on shallow little drawers on either side. You'll also notice the color is slightly different. This was restored when this house was used still as a residence, and this room was being used as a guest bedroom. They were still using this end table here. And so it was color matched to a visual inspection, and the rest of the furniture in the room was color matched using chemistry and paint analysis. And I love this little piece, just the way that it makes you feel like you're on a boat with these great Art Deco, really Art Moderne lines. The plugs always, why did they have 4 plugs right here? I don't know. They were not charging cell phones. And then the lamp did have a lamp shade. So there's some mysteries for this corner, including the mystery of what did the bed itself look like. The Saarinens were fairly conservative people. They never had the bedroom photographed with the beds shown. And so the beds did not survive into the 1980s when the house was restored, and there are no photographs showing the beds or how this side of the room was set up. And so these are restored based on Loya Saarinen's descriptions of the inventory of the house after Eliel's death in 1950, when she describes it as tan taffeta with piping and ruching. And then also the housekeeper, who was in her 90s, she was interviewed by Greg Whitcomb, and she sort of described what the room looked like. Now, the beds themselves were designed by Michael McCoy after Eero Saarinen. Again, with no photographs, how did they know what this looked like? Well, luckily for Greg and for all of us, really, all of the furniture in Saarinen House was perfectly illustrated on the floor plan correctly. So where things like this table show up are those chairs. They're all drawn into the floor plan, sort of perfectly scaled and at full detailed. And so the shape of it came from the floor plan, and then things like the height of it, as well as the little edge detailing with that bead molding, are coming from the furniture that did survive. And so it's a educated guess as to how it would look. Now, in the room, there are Loya's family members. So on the side there are pencil drawings of her mother, father, and grandfather. And then Herman Gazelius, her grandfather, is also depicted in the portrait here above the couch. And then her great aunt is here. The womb chair would be the last change by Eero Saarinen in the house. So there was a little coral and gold lounge chair in this room, designed by possibly J. Robert F. Swanson. It was changed out in 1948 for the womb chair. The Saarinen seniors had Eero Saarinen's second womb chair ever. And so theirs was actually a prototype, and it had sisal or grass reinforced plastic and an iron base. This is a 2017 reproduction, a production model. So it's fiberglass reinforced plastic and a steel, a bent tubular steel base. And this chair has been in production since October 1948. And again, the Saarinens had womb chair number 2 up here in the bedroom. Now, just because I am here and I love showing it off, we will step up and look at my outfit, make sure that I look good for the Uncovering Cranbrook lecture later. And then you open it and you find the bathroom, and we're back in the cool geometric embrace of Eero Saarinen now, where he has designed this fully bilaterally symmetrical bathroom, which owes much to sort of Austrian secessionist style, into German, turn of the 20th century design, with this cream-colored tile with a shiny black molding, vitrolite or structural glass on the countertops. There's no faucet. Instead, you turn the middle knob and that closes the drain. And then the outer 2 knobs, the water comes out here and it fills up like a wash basin. I agree, Rocco. It looks lit. And then you have here Eliel's washstand. And from here, he could look out, and he was looking down at the architecture students. And so this is how he would know who was arriving late to studio. So he would come in here at 8 o'clock and then see who wasn't there. And then when he would walk down at 8:30, he'd be able to say, "Oh, where were you this morning?" And they thought he was sort of magical for being able to know who was arriving on time and who wasn't. And then on this view, we can look down at the garden and the octagonal paving stones. Now, Saarinen always said that you designed for the next largest and the next smallest thing. He also taught that everything should have an element of surprise and delight, and he actually hated perfect symmetry. And so here we see the bathroom rug, which has been designed by Loya Saarinen in relation to the next largest thing, to the tiles. The element of surprise and delight to my eye would be the little bouquet of flowers. And then, of course, it is, in fact, asymmetrical. So it has a gray hem or gray weaving on this side with the black and cream, and then a solid black edge on this side. And then how it relates to the next largest whole, that's the original there, is that we look back across the room this direction, and we see that the rag rug underneath Eero's bench is a variation on the same thing of that diagonal pattern. And then we see the octagon from the courtyard make a reappearance here, and it goes on and on and on, and you can become entrapped in the glory of the Saarinens as you think about all the ways that they coordinated together these items in the house and the decorative art objects, and just this whole sort of life without beauty is only half lived, where they are controlling every aspect of their design. Thanks so much for joining me for another Live at 5 tour here on Instagram. I'll be back tomorrow on Facebook Live at 5 o'clock, and then next Tuesday here on Instagram. But if you missed the start of today's presentation, we were focusing on Eero Saarinen and his designs for Saarinen House, because at 7 o'clock p.m. we have our next Uncovering Cranbrook lecture series. And today's lecture focuses on Eero Saarinen's education at Yale and his return to that university in the 1950s to design 3 new buildings. If you think, why should I care about Yale? Well, come along and you'll learn why you should care about it. But I've also arranged today's presentation so that it focuses not just on his buildings and studies at Yale, but on how those buildings really derived from a lifetime of professional practice designing campuses and designing university buildings. So it includes work he did at the University of Michigan, work he did for Drake University and for Brandeis and for MIT, and all of these amazing little projects that sort of lead up to Vassar, Pennsylvania, University of Chicago, and then finally Yale, which was one of the last buildings he ever designed, and which I think marked a real transformative moment in his career and really in modern architecture more broadly. So I hope that you are able to join me. Tickets are still available online at center.cranbrook.edu. Hello, Dean Massey. Welcome to the end of the tour. I will be talking about the North Campus on my lecture tonight, so perhaps I will see you there. Though Eero Saarinen abandoned the North Campus proposal and really lit into the university regents about how they had destroyed his plan and forced him to put his building, as he said, running off into the woods, the School of Music. Anyways, there's so many wonderful stories. I'm going to go try and delete some more slides so that I can end the lecture on time this afternoon, or at least before midnight. So I feel like 4 hours is really bare minimum what one should discuss Eero Saarinen with. However, tonight's lecture will just be from 7 to 8 o'clock. So again, tickets are at center.cranbrook.edu. I'll be there at 7 o'clock. Tickets are open until 6 p.m. Hopefully I'll see you there. Send us a message if you have any questions. And if not, I'll be back here for another Live at 5 next Wednesday. From Saarinen House and from the glorious designs of a teenage, early adult Eero Saarinen, I am Kevin Adkisson with the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research. Thanks so much for watching.